Hello everyone, I'm back again with another holiday or Christmas related video, and this is going to be about 5 books I've read and really enjoyed that just when I think of the holidays, these books come to mind, even though they don't necessarily have holiday or Christmassy type themes, or they're not about Santa Claus, they're not about anything like that. A lot of them, I guess, do have some sort of like winter element or that feeling of coziness during the winter, and that really makes me think of the holidays as well. So let's get started. The first one is The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. And of course, L.M. Montgomery is famous for having written Anne of Green Gables. I think this is a very little known book by her, but I read it in 2012 and absolutely loved it. It is so good. It's a short little book. It's about a woman named Valancy, and she lives with her mother and her prying aunt, and they're just like want her to get married, and they're like mean to her, and I mean not like in an over dramatic like unrealistic way, but there's just she's considered the spinster and she just conforms, and their life is just, oh, it's awful. And then she gets a diagnosis that she's sick, and she decides to just screw it all and start living, and goes off on her own, and she ends up like living in this little cabin. And there's I just have this vivid memory of like when it snowed and she's out in her snowshoes, and she describes the forest and the trees with the snow on them, and it's just so gorgeous and beautiful. And this book has such a wonderful message about being true to yourself, living your life, and not worrying what other people think about you. And I just can't recommend this book enough, just in general, but it definitely reminds me of the holidays. And I think it would be a great book to reread around Christmas time or around December, January time as well. The next book is kind of a young adult book, and it's part of a series, but it's very short. It's called Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster. It's a very short book, less than 200 pages. It's about a young girl who's in a boarding school, and she corresponds with the person who is kind of her guardian, who is sending her money, supporting her, and they develop this friendship through letters. So it's an epistolary novel, which I love books like that anyway. And they just kind of correspond, and I guess it's kind of like a little bit of a love story as to like, okay, who is he, and am I falling in love with him, and things like that. And this book is a series, so there are more books in it. I've only read the first one and I loved it. There's another one called Dear Enemy. I haven't read that one yet, but I just remember having fond memories, and just that feeling that her describing the boarding school and maybe being cooped up inside in the winter, and letter writing and reading and studying. And it just gives me, again, like I said, that cozy feeling of, reading a book or being kept up inside when it's cold outside and you can't really go anywhere and it's all snowy. The next book is called Tryst by Elswyth Thane. This is a very old book. It was first published in 1939, and I don't remember how I heard about it, but on some blog somebody absolutely raved about it, and I just had to read it, and I read it and I loved it. And it's just so quirky. I'm not sure that it even has any winter element in it or anything like that, but it just immediately came to mind when I thought of doing these 5 books. It's about a young girl who moves out of London to live with her father and aunt in their summer home. And there's a room there that someone used to occupy, a man, and she doesn't know who he is, but she likes to go into his room and like look at his things and try and figure out who he was, what kind of life he led, and things like that. And then you also have the other side where you do learn a little bit about this person, who he is, and she starts to fall in love with him. And you kind of wonder, like, it says, can this obsession end happily? That's part of the synopsis on Goodreads. And it does have a little bit of, I don't want to give any spoilers, but a little bit of a supernatural element to it. But it's just so good and so heartwarming, such a good little story that it immediately came to mind. And like I said, it's so obscure that I just wanted to share it in case you're looking for some unique book that you've never heard of that is really cool to read around the holidays or anytime, really. The next book is called Portrait of Jenny. It's by Robert Nathan, and I first heard about this story or this book by the movie adaptation. The book was first published in 1940, and they made a movie of it in 1948. I saw the movie first and really enjoyed it, and it's just one that, I mean, I love watching movies from the 30s and 40s. My grandmother loves them too, and I usually watch them with her, especially around the holidays when I go home, and we'll just stay in and watch movies and things. And so maybe that's why I thought of it as being kind of a holiday sort of one, but then when I found out it was based on a book, I immediately got my hands on it and read it. It's only like less than 200 pages, and it's a story about a young girl and this man, an artist, and he meets this girl intermittently, and every time he sees her, she's like growing up a little bit quicker than she really should be, and she's remembering things that happened a long time ago as if they happened recently, and he's kind of like mystified. So it has a supernatural sort of element to it there as well. And I just remember, especially in the movie, these scenes where they're in the winter time and there's snow and it's in New York, I think. And so it definitely gives me that feeling, and I just have such a great memory of this movie, this book. It's nostalgic, and all of that comes together at the holidays. So if you haven't heard of this book or this movie, I recommend both of them. They're very cool, very unique. They're not like anything you've probably read recently, so definitely highly recommended. The last book is one I read 3 years ago, but I still remember it very vividly. It's called Nocturne by SYRIE James, and it's a contemporary sort of romance, but not a romance novel, at least not in the traditional sense. And the cover itself, just you can see the beautiful snow and the color, and it's about this woman. She is in Colorado in a snowstorm. Her car runs off the road, and she's taken in by this, handsome, stranger, and there's something going on with him, and she kind of has to figure out, what's the deal? Is he dangerous? I think it's not a spoiler because it's right in the genres. If you look this book up on Goodreads, that it has, a vampire element as well. But there's definitely like a bookish element. I think, and if I recall correctly, he's a writer, and there's descriptions of books and readings, and they're, holed up in this cabin, and it's snowy outside, and the descriptions of, the nature around them, well, it's covered in snow and winter and the cold, just makes me instantly think of the holidays. And I remember really loving this book, and it's definitely not a traditional romance novel. I feel like it's very mature, has great characters. The decisions that the characters make about things, about their situation, are just really realistic, and I just really was affected by this book. And even though it's very light and fluffy, I still it stayed with me all this time. So those are the 5 books that come to mind when I think of wintertime, holidays, Christmas, snow and cold weather, things like that, but that don't necessarily have themes of a holiday or Christmassy nature. So if you haven't read any of them, I definitely recommend them. If you're looking for something unique, and even if it's not during the winter time, you could read these anytime really, but they're even better, I think, when it's colder outside. So if you've read any of them, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've enjoyed them, if I've maybe brought to your attention some new books you've never heard of, which one jumps out at you, or which ones would you like to read and get your hands on? I can't recommend all of them enough. I hope you got something new and interesting from this video, and I will talk to you in my next video. Happy reading, everyone, and happy holidays. Bye.